Cold has rules, brutal, merciless rules. Break them and you freeze, honor them and you survive. And, no one understood those rules better than the Vikings, men and women who crossed the North Atlantic in open boats while today's hikers panic over a broken zipper. Their secret wasn't magic. It wasn't brute strength. It was a clever ice-proofing trick so effective that, honestly, modern winter jackets still can't fully match it. And if you want more ancient survival wisdom like this, hit subscribe to Prepper's Survival Blueprint. Because, the old world has far more to teach us than most people realize. Let's pull back the frost and look at what the Vikings really knew. The North Sea was a cold monster. The Vikings lived with winter in a way most of us can hardly imagine today. Scandinavian winters routinely slipped into -5 to -15 degrees Celsius. That's about 23 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And the cold was only half the threat. Out on the water, their longships were entirely open to the sky. No cabins, no shelters, just freezing winds slashing across the waves and seawater turning to ice the moment it hit wood. Yet, despite these conditions, Vikings weren't just travelling. They were pushing into the unknown, sailing to Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. That alone tells you something extraordinary was happening with their cold weather gear. They didn't just endure the cold, they beat it. And the key was wool, but not the wool we know today. The power of untreated wool. Modern shoppers often see wool as old-fashioned or itchy. Vikings saw it as high technology centuries ahead of its time. Their wool was rich, heavy, and packed with lanolin, the natural wax found in sheep's fleece. They never stripped it out. They preserved it, nurtured it, and wove clothing designed to turn that wax into an ice shield. Lanolin repels water, retains warmth even when damp, and forms a natural wind barrier. Modern down collapses when wet. Synthetics stop breathing when temperatures drop or when salt and dirt clog their membranes. But Viking wool didn't care. It stayed warm, soft and functional in conditions that make high-end jackets fail. To the Vikings, wool wasn't clothing. It was survival. How lanolin creates a natural ice shield. Lanolin is waxy at cool temperatures but softens with heat, and that's where the Viking brilliance really shines. They wove their wool into a dense fabric called vadmal. When moisture hit this fabric, something remarkable happened. Water simply rolled off. The outer layer might freeze into a shell, but the inner layers remained warm and flexible. Your body heat kept the lanolin supple, creating a barrier that resisted sleet, snow, and wind. The fabric breathed gently, letting sweat escape so it didn't turn into a freezing curse beneath your clothing. Even in a storm, vadmal refused to soak through. It shrugged off sea spray. It resisted freezing rain. And when it met ice, it stayed warm underneath. The Vikings had created a natural soft-shell jacket centuries before the concept existed. The Viking layering system was genius. Material alone isn't enough. It's how you wear it that makes the difference. And this is where Viking layering shines. They built a temperature control system far more dynamic than the one-piece zip-up winter jackets we rely on today. Closest to the skin, they wore a soft wicking layer, usually linen or fine wool. This kept sweat off the body, preventing the cooling effect that can turn a winter journey into a death sentence. Over that came heavier wool garments, thick and warm, creating a pocket of insulating air. Finally, on top, the vadmal cloak or coat acted as the ice shield, blocking wind and keeping the elements at bay. Everything worked together. Nothing trapped moisture. Nothing collapsed under pressure. It was mobility-friendly, repairable and durable enough to last for years. This was no primitive wardrobe. It was a system tuned through generations of survival. Secret upgrades. Vikings used to push the cold back further. The Vikings didn't stop at wool. They were frontier innovators, always looking for an edge. Some garments were rubbed down with tallow or fish oil, giving them an extra waterproofing layer that, remained flexible even in frigid air. The scent was probably unforgettable, but so was the protection. They also understood strategic use of fur. Instead of wearing heavy fur coats that could get waterlogged, they placed fur on collars, cuffs, and hoods to seal in heat, where the body loses it quickest. These details mattered. In survival, small decisions often make the biggest difference. Why modern jackets fall short? Modern jackets are honestly impressive pieces of engineering, but they struggle with the one scenario Vikings faced every single day. Wet cold. Down loses loft when damp, and even water-resistant treatments, they break down over time. Synthetic shells clog up with salt, dirt, and sweat, losing their breathability. And the second a membrane stops breathing, moisture builds up inside the jacket, cooling the wearer from within. Compression is the silent killer. If you sit down on a cold rock or lean into the wind, your insulation just collapses. Warmth escapes and you chill fast. Lanolin-rich wool avoids all of these problems. Even when wet, it can retain up to 80 to 90% of its insulating power, something no synthetic or down material can match naturally. Add in its natural breathability and wind resistance, and you start to understand why Viking clothing still inspires modern outdoor experts. The old world wasn't behind. It was just using a different kind of science. How to recreate the Viking ice shield today. You don't need a long ship or a beard braided with bone beads to build this kind of winter armour. You just need the right approach. Start with high lanolin wool. Icelandic wool is the closest modern equivalent. And choose tight weaves or felted wool for your outer garments. Then add your own waterproofing using lanolin wax, tallow or beeswax blends. Layer smartly. Pair a moisture-wicking inner layer with a warm mid-layer and a heavy wool outer garment. Give yourself freedom of movement. Keep your gear breathable. The Vikings understood that survival meant staying dry on the inside as much as the outside. Follow their method and you'll have clothing that stands up to storms without relying on fragile synthetic technology. The Viking advantage was knowledge, not hype. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. The Vikings didn't defeat the cold with brute force. They beat it with knowledge. Quiet, practical, hard-earned understanding of materials and nature. Their clothing wasn't flashy, but it worked in the most unforgiving environments on Earth. And that's the heart of what we explore here on Prepper's Survival Blueprint. Not gimmicks, not hype, just raw, timeless survival wisdom that still holds up today. Final word. The Vikings didn't just survive the cold, they outsmarted it. With lanolin-rich wool, smart layering and clever natural waterproofing, they built an ice shield that rivals and often surpasses modern winter jackets. If you want more lost knowledge, ancient tactics, and real-world prepping skills, make sure to subscribe and share this video. There's a whole world of old wisdom waiting to be rediscovered, and together we're bringing it back to life.